Hello, good evening, welcome to Upfront. Now, the May ending deadline for the registration and issuance of the Ghana card, as promised by Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bamia, may not see the light of day if the registration is not done in the next 24 hours. That is, they have only tomorrow to prove they sit, and maybe the final deadline that we're given would actually see the light of day. This was after officials of the NI failed on Monday to show up at the designated centers for the exercise. And since Monday, they've not showed up. But does this mean the process has been suspended indefinitely? What's the way forward for an effective, more reliable, modern identification system? I'll tell you my guests after this break. You're welcome. This is Upfront. My name is Raymond Aqua. Today, I bring you a man who's done this before. Of course, his own did not have instant issuance, but that's a different conversation that we'll be having today. A former boss of the National Identification Authority, Dr. William Ahaji, is actually my guest on Upfront today. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I hope you are doing well.
I'm hanging in there.
I mean, you are running the NDC's school. Does it have a different name apart from NDC school?
It's the Ghana Institute of Social Democracy.
The Ghana Institute of Social Democracy.
Yes.
That's interesting to know. And how's the school going?
Doing very well.
You have gotten students?
We've just completed a cross-country training program for our communicators.
For foot soldiers?
No, for communicators.
The school is not for foot soldiers?
No, it isn't. We run training program for even you know, the top ranked people. We've had ministers come for training, former ministers come for training. We have a program for former ambassadors very soon, in a couple of weeks. We've run programs for all sorts of people, and we are going to run programs for our newly elected branch executives. We want to improve governance, essentially.
Okay. So you run programs on probity and accountability, the
all the values, all the principles that any public office holder would require in discharging his or her mandate.
You run programs on corruption and anti-corruption?
We run programs on public financial management.
Oh, that's interesting to know.
So clearly the systems and the processes that are required for efficient public financial management are all taught in there.
And have you crossed the T's and dotted the I's with the National Accreditation Board?
Well,
the initial
for now,
raised?
we began the process, and you know it takes quite a number of requirements, and we're working towards that. And in time, we'll let that happen.
And would it not be more appropriate to have had this requirement prior to commencing?
Because we are not issuing we are not issuing degrees and all of those things here. We are just issuing certificates of participation. It's just like go to a
very little value then.
It's not very little value.
It's just capacity building. Conference, really.
Capacity building is done by other institutions. You know, you don't necessarily have to have value on the open market if you can use it to improve your work wherever you are.
But you've headed the Social Policy Studies Unit at the University of Ghana before.
Yeah.
That's not how you run the institution.
What's the difference?
You didn't run it awaiting what they call it.
We had short courses. They're not degree programs. In CSPS we did. And
those ones you're also doing that the way you're running these programs?
Of course. I mean, this is, I can tell you that our academic affairs committee is made up of solid academics. It's headed by Professor Kwame Nahoe, there's Professor Danso Boafo, there's a large number of academics who are members of the Academic Affairs Committee of the school, of the institute.
So what's the plan? I mean, by the time a member of the party goes through the process, what do you expect of them? What did they become at the end of the day?
We are transferring both knowledge and skills.
Okay.
So you understand the theory, the principles of the ideology of the party, but you also learn skills like leadership skills, party organization skills. We have different programs. So if we are doing leadership training, for instance, we follow all the principles and teach all the leadership skills that you need. But you need to understand the history of Ghana, the history of the party, and the philosophy of the party.
It's an institute for social democracy.
Yes. So you need to learn about social democracy.
The constitution of the NDC actually stipulates that it was founded on the principles of probity, accountability, that which belongs to the man Jerry John Rawlings, right?
But those are universal values, aren't they?
Yes,
yeah. So and then
but it doesn't sound to anybody. He's never ascribed to himself as a social democrat before.
No,
the former President Rawlings.
You know, in the past there were different forms of governance systems and economic management system. There was the far left and the far right. The far right was pure capitalism.
Yeah.
So both divides have moved a little towards the center.
Yeah.
You have the center right, the center left. So
I agree.
It's evolving. And
my only difficulty is that the man whose values founded the party doesn't seem to ascribe to the same values
he does.
For which, really?
Trust me,
He's never said he's social democrat before.
No, but these are values that...
Can you point to a single platform he did so?
No, but you see, he doesn't have to say he's a social democrat when necessarily, but the party has declared social democracy as its ideology.
I see.
So we don't have a problem with that.
But can non-NDC members like myself also come in?
Well, when the time comes, we'll let you know.
We still have, it is restricted to parties.
It's a demand-based system. We still
yes, I'm making the demand. I want to also be trained.
Okay, when I get a large number of your kind, we run custom.
You don't want to train journalists to appreciate social democracy better.
We train. I told you, we just train our communicators.
Your communicators are not journalists.
They are journalists
in your communication.
Of course.
What kind of journalists are they? Party journalists?
No, they are journalists who went to journalism schools.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, they are there. Yeah.
And they're openly affiliated to a political party?
They will affiliate to by all means because they have a right to affiliate to any political party.
I see the point.
Yeah.
And they can dispassionately dispense with their duties as journalists.
Oh, they do. They do. Yes, they do.
Doc, thank you so much. And I'm sure we only have time. We'll talk about the structures of the NDC and how this school is running. But I brought you here today because there's some crisis on the front of identification in this country. Now, we've tried consistently within the last 2 years, close to 4, 5, 6 times, to get ourselves a modern, unique, special ID card, which we are told has all the specialities that you would expect of a wonderful card of its sort. Instant issuance. Immediately you go there, they should give it to you. Monday was the big day. The great institutions of the nation had people lined up to go get their ID cards, but this really did not happen because there was a glitch. We're told it's a technical problem. Take us back to what is really Ghana's appreciation of the national ID system and where we want to go with this particular system.
Yeah, first of all, there's a desire by Ghanaians of all political traditions to have a national ID system. There is, and let me state clearly that as a political party, the NDC supports the issue of a national ID card. You know, it came out of the economic, for this generation of ID cards, came out of the economic dialogue in 2001, and the process had continued until 2008 when the appropriate legal framework was established, and then NIA was established also. Equipment procured, a facility was put up, a purpose-built facility was put up, and then we began the registration, the mass registration at the time, and it was a countrywide mass registration. The difference between that and what is happening today is that at the time, the technology available did not allow for real-time card issuance or instant card issuance. If you capture the biometric and the biographic data of everyone, you needed to take that, you transported that by CD to the center, run the processing, which we call the deduplication, because you didn't want the people to exist in the database twice. You did that one, and then you moved the data to the personalization unit or the printing unit. The card was printed, you packed the cards, and then you would go back to where you collected the data and you distribute the cards. That was exactly what the system, at least I inherited, was set up for. Now, the difficulty with that, and it was a big difficulty, was that the cost of distribution of the cards was just as high as the cost of data collection or the mass registration. Now, if you didn't do that, if you didn't have budget support for it, you had the difficulty in doing that. So that was a problem we had at the time. But what's happening today, or what was intended with this round of ID system, is that instead of incurring costs going back to issue the cards, the technology had advanced, and so you could just at the center where the registration is occurring, you could run information right into the central database. You get a response, and then you can issue the card. What it means is that it does the matching. If they took your biographic data, the system sends it, the terminal sends it to the central database. It runs the check, and if you are not there, you are cleared and the card is issued. But the conditions for that to happen include a very effective and functioning network, which will allow the two systems to communicate. And indeed, it's not only the two systems, it's all the point at which enrollment is happening, registration
centers.
Yes, the registration
And in this case,
centers.
we're told that it was going to be done at the various points of registration for your voter's ID. So virtually all
the national ID, the Ghana card.
Yes, it's going to be the same place that you did your voter's ID registration.
Yes, well, as for the registration centers, you want to make it as, coterminous with, because it makes it a lot easy when you're planning. So there was no problem with that.
Okay.
But you see, the point is that if the centers are effectively connected with the AFIS, the central database, then the processing can happen. If there is any break, it's pointless sending registration officials to the centers, registration centers. That's, I think, if there's any there are other issues about integration, but I'm not privy to exactly whether that is the exact problem. And NIA has said that there's a glitch, there's a technical hitch, which means...
I'll cut to give you a second. Let me just take you a step backwards.
Okay.
What prevented you from doing this instant issuance?
We actually started.
Instant issuance?
Yeah, I did, with the Foreigners Identification Management System. We began that.
Oh, you're doing it for foreigners?
Yes.
Not Ghanaians?
Because you see, what...
So the NI is for Ghanaians, but you're doing the instant
No. The law requires that you register Ghanaians living here and Ghanaians living abroad, and foreigners living in Ghana. It was a requirement of the Act of establishing the NI.
My only concern was that the more convenient system was given to foreigners.
No. Let me explain that. Because we had constraints in terms of financing, we rolled out a model that allowed us to charge for the foreigners card. So with the money that we were supposed to realize, we were then going to upscale that and use that to procure the equipment that will allow us to do real-time card issuance.
So instant issuance was possible then?
Oh, we actually did it.
It was actually being done?
It was being done. It's still being done.
What was the biggest problem with broad-scale rollout to, let's say, the entire Greater Accra region? Was it financial? No, because we're dealing with foreigners. Yes, but I'm saying that what prevented you from doing it for we Ghanaians too?
Well, that's the point I'm making, that we were constrained in terms of resources.
Finance,
and so we were trying to use that to raise the money. Because
so when you register foreigners, they pay for it. They pay
$120 per card.
Okay.
We got parliamentary approval for that. And so we were building a fund. The money was supposed to go into an escrow account, which means that it will grow, and then you can use that to procure equipment and roll out. We even bought a vehicle, equipped it with the real-time instant card issuance. It's sitting there somewhere. It must be there. At least I did that, so I know that then you can drive it to centers, do the direct issuance, instead of parking a lot of equipment on the back of a truck and then be looking for... We needed to have different approaches so that in the event that one didn't work, the other one will be working.
Okay, so we had alternatives in place.
We had alternatives in place.
I would explore that later on in our conversation. Yes. But a point that I need to make it, what did it cost to issue Ghanaians with the ID cards when you're in charge?
Well, the budget, we always made a request to government. Every year we requested amounts, but unfortunately, I didn't know that would come out. I would have shown you the graph. The releases from government kept coming down. It wasn't only in 2009. It started, before I took over. But government releases were shrinking. But let me even backtrack a little. The design of the registration exercise was such that the mass registration was supposed to have been completed within 9 months, from 2008 when it started.
Okay.
Yeah, it was supposed to have been completed within 9 months. But that was conditioned upon the release of funds for the mass registration to be completed almost entirely. And that was under Professor Dumont.
Okay.
But he also suffered the same thing that all my predecessors suffered. It was suffered by Professor Dumont, it was suffered by Professor Ken Atifa, and I also had that. So government releases were declining. And indeed, that's the reason why, in my time, I sought to raise funds. And I actually contracted one of these accounting firms to give us, if you like, a business plan. Because identity management is an income earning process. When people are renewing their cards, when people are verifying identification, for instance, if we're dealing with the financial institutions that want to be sure that they are dealing with the right people, the banks were asked to identify people through the KYC.
That's the financial model in this particular case.
Yeah, we did a financial model.
Currently, government wants to deploy a similar one. Are you aware?
Yeah, the point I'm making is that government has built on the model that we...
Okay.
It's a PPP model.
I see.
The FIMS was a PPP model. The Foreigner Identification Management Project was a PPP model, which, I mean, under my tenure, we put together.
How many cards did you issue?
For the Ghana card, or for the Ghanaians, or for the...
For Ghanaians.
Oh, well, at least we had finished personalizing the cards for the Greater Accra region. After I left, I don't know what month it did, but we had given almost 30 or 40% of that. And again, during that time, because we had difficulty in taking
and the main problem was money?
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. So we decided that for the institutions...
Okay, so you had registered all the people?
We had registered across the country. We completed a registration exercise that was begun under Professor Dumont, continued by Professor Ken Atifa, and then I completed all of it.
And the problem was with money to issue
for
cards?
the registration, we completed.
You completed it?
Yeah, but going back
cards
to do that, because at any given time, you deployed 1,500 mobile station operators, workstation operators. You had to move vehicles into the field. You had to move materials into the field for registration. And you needed to deploy the same number to go back to the same point where they registered. And now the reason is that you want to be sure that the people who registered are the people who came for the card. So even if we printed the card, the technology was that you would go back, we would take your biometrics again, and then you would take your card. We needed to do that because now if you put that into the database, we can now use that for identity authentication and for all the transactions that you'll be doing across the country. And so that was very cumbersome and that was very expensive. Now, if for some reason the 9-month enrollment program did not complete in 9 months. I mean, I met it in 2000 and I finished it in 2013.
That's interesting.
Yes. So
there's always been a problem with delivering on deadlines when it comes to identification in this country.
Well, I may want to agree to that.
Okay.
But the constraints are not because management was not doing what it ought to do.
That's interesting to note. But let me come to this point. Now, I get the impression here that it was not rocket science to do instant issuance.
No, it wasn't.
The problem was with finance and how to be able to raise it and use it.
Well, yes. I mean, to a large extent, yes. But you see,
was technology also a problem?
For the things we were doing, technology wasn't a problem. Okay. We got state-of-the-art technology at the time that we procured the equipment.
Yes, because the understanding now is that we have better technology. Exactly. We have more updated, more fancy things that would work easily, things that make it very easy for you to do your job, especially for people who are going to do the registration and all of this. But the question about how much it cost us to do the project previously and now is also important.
Well, we've raised issues about that, but I mean, I'm still trying to go through the details of what's been put out as the cost of the current arrangement with the WLC, the whole life costs financial projections.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand it.
What do you mean you are trying to understand it? I thought it was pretty fair, straightforward.
Well, you see, there are assumptions. And the assumption, for instance, is that when you do your financial model, you are looking at income streams from users of your data. And those institutions that have been listed as those that would pay for the services are institutions that have their own acts of incorporation, if you want to put it that way. The National Health Insurance Authority, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and I think another one. Now, if there is no law binding them, they already have their own databases anyway. If you don't integrate theirs, if there's no law binding them to take data from the central database, how are you going to get your revenues? And as it is now, there's no law binding any one of them to procure data from NIA because they've all created their own databases. You don't want to have silos of databases because you're dealing with biometric data. And I've said this many times that the NIA system is like a bank. If there is loss of confidence in that institution, your biometric data is at risk. And indeed, you yourself will be at risk because we know that people can use your biometric data they can wipe out your account.
So you are saying that you are failing to see how it's possible for us to raise the chunk of the 1.2 billion within the 15-year period that we say we will do so.
The commitments are huge. I mean, when we met the Ghana team, the Ghana Card team yesterday, we were told that Ghana was going to raise $124 million.
Yes, immediately. That's the initial cost.
And so I just said I'd like to interrogate what will go into that. You see, because of the new law that was introduced, they've reduced the number of the base documents, or if you like, the breeder document, the passport, and the law says, the previous law says you could use your the voter's ID card, the driver's license, baptismal certificate, and all of that. It's been reduced to 2. Now, but there's another dimension of it where in the event where someone doesn't have any of the 2, someone will have to attest that you are the one.
Bring somebody who fill the oath form.
Yes. Then, or that the commissioner of oath you will have to swear an oath. We were told yesterday that there will be 2,700 commissioners of oath that will be carried along with the 3,000 workstation operators. That's a very huge operational cost. So you're going to, the easiest thing you could have done, you could have used the voter's ID card, which has been validated. All of us holding the voter's ID card have been established to be Ghanaians by a Supreme Court ruling. 15 million people, almost. You've discarded that one. And then you're going to carry 2,700 commissioners of oath into every community, every registration center. As I said, there will be real operational challenges because if the time that you are going to save with just people coming with a voter's card to register and walk away will be lost by asking people to go and swear an oath. And from the figures that came through yesterday, we have only 2 million people with passports. 2 million Ghanaians with passports. 7 million people with birth certificates. That's what we were told yesterday. Now, obviously, to get a passport, you need a birth certificate. Yeah. So the assumption is that even these 2 million people who are part of the 7 million,
okay,
we are dealing. Then the law requires that you register all Ghanaians.
0 to whichever age.
You register all Ghanaians, and assuming that the population is 25, 26, 27 million, you have only 7 million people who are going to register or who are ready to register. Now, the other 23 or 20 million people would have to be, attested by a commissioner of oath, 2,700 commissioners. We don't, as we speak now, we were told yesterday, we have only 300 commissioners of vote in Ghana today. NI is going to now hire recruit 2,700 of them, and they'll be trained by the judicial system. I mean, why would you carry that load? You're going to be carrying 2,700 commissioners to every part of this country, even where they can't speak the local language. You're going to create problems for yourself. They are planting the mines in the field themselves.
Oh, it's interesting, but these are things that you would want to think through it. You would want to minimize costs, mindful of the fact that people complain.
Yeah, definitely. So, but you see, the real challenge will happen when the rollout begins and people go to the registration centers. The form is, they've added additional fields to what we were doing previously. And even with our case, it took sometimes 15 minutes. This one is going to take perhaps 20 minutes to complete.
Because of the instant issuance?
No, because of the additional fields that have been introduced. Okay. I mean, for telephoning, fields and all sorts of things. Now, that's where the trouble will start. And you know what happens? Now, with the removal of some of these base documents, two people would say, I know you. Your relatives will say, I know you. And you know what's going to happen? This is going to spawn a kind of Goro Boys arrangement where people are now going to testify to collect money. They were doing it in our time.
Okay.
It will grow today. And then the birth certificate, people will be trooping to the birth and death registry to get certificates. That's going to be another informal arrangement where people will be creating problems for the system.
So the credibility of the cards, the identification system, and also the database that we are going to have, it's not going to be completely ensured with this system.
Well, you see,
because people have had difficulties with the birth certificates really from day one.
Exactly.
That anybody can procure one, anybody can access it, can sit at home and go and procure like 40 for an entire group of people for no reason.
That's the point we are making. That you see, you're going to create...
that's the only prerequisite for you to get a national
ID card.
Anybody can get a national ID.
Well, so that's the point we are making. And even the birth certificate is not biometric. So I can go and get it easily.
Get more.
And get more. And I'm doing... So the unintended effects are lost on the system as we speak now. And once the actual registration begins, trust me, we had a lot of... Even with all of these things, we had people, and the law was that one person should guarantee, and we had one person guarantee, and one person, you yourself should have registered. You yourself should have registered before guaranteeing it for the
So you have to guarantee as an individual?
You have to guarantee so that if your relative
7 million can guarantee an additional 7 million?
Well, if you get the 7 million, yes.
That's interesting.
That's all that you can get. Then
so
the other
million,
one...
What happens to the rest of the people?
Well, they have to then go and swear affidavits before a commissioner of oath who is sitting there and then come back. You see, those are the complications that NIA is going to, carry by itself. And it imposed that on itself. Okay. Because by going to change the act, we were cautioning yesterday.
You are a former boss of the unit. Yes. Why haven't you made these points very clear to them?
But did anybody talk to me?
You're not consulted?
No. In any case, I would have advised against dropping the national the voter's ID card, because that's by the Supreme Court ruling. You recall, we were asked to clean. In fact, the Electoral Commission was directed to remove the names of all the foreigners, and they asked those who were making the complaint that bring the names. They brought the names. It wasn't
and
even
also
up to
those who registered with the NHIS.
Yes, all of that was cleaned out. So the assumption is that in accordance with Article 42 of the Constitution, everybody who held the voter's ID card at the time was considered a citizen. That's why they voted. So why would you drop people, already 15 million people that are there already, and then you go and now look for 7 million people, and then you start creating problems for yourself? I mean, I don't understand it.
This is Dr. William Ahaji. He's a former boss of the NIA. It painted a not so nice picture, even when we get to start the registration and issuance of the cards in the first place. After this break, continue our conversation on what the way forward and how best this exercise can happen. And we have some very wonderful system in the future. You welcome back to our front. My name is Raymond Alqua. My guest today is a former boss of the National Identification Authority. We did know that on Monday we were supposed to have that particular exercise going on. It didn't happen. We knew that there were some challenges. Professor Kanatefa says there were technical glitches which really will be resolved soon and we're back on board. What happened was that it was suspended indefinitely. So we've not been given the next date where we're going to have this exercise coming up. But this is not the first time it's been suspended, raising questions about whether or not we can be able to deliver a more comprehensive, better ID system that would actually spur the growth in all development areas that we want in this country. The man who's been there, done it, seen it, is my guest. He didn't register and give cards to all Ghanaians. He said he registered all, but he didn't give the cards to all Ghanaians. He says there are financial constraints, but that's an issue that we would interrogate further. We left off Dr. William Aji on the note of having to raise an issue that's likely to happen, even if you're able to cross the technical hitch and begin the registration. Yes. It's to do with identification, first and foremost, and how best, with the current legal regime, we are going to work around the turnaround time of production of cards and the impact on the other expenditure costs that are involved. Have you seen the cost-benefit or value for money analysis done before?
I've just seen what's been put out in the public domain, and I don't know whether a VFM, a value for money check was done. I mean, I haven't seen that one, but it must have been done for them to come up with those figures. But
we understand that the value for money was audited or done by the Public Procurement Authority and the Public Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance.
Well, I mean, but I still, from the figures I've seen, I'm saying that there are too many assumptions.
Legitimate assumptions or illegitimate assumptions?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, when you're doing your financial
because finances really require some level of assumptions anyway.
Yes,
because you're projecting for the future.
But that's also, you're also cautioned to minimize the risks in the like unlikely event that, you know, the revenue streams don't come at the rate at which you want them. And I'm saying that if the expected expenditure is related to, no income stream is related to what has been assumed there, then there's a risk. I mean, I'm saying what you want to make it cost effective.
Are you saying that we cannot raise the amount of money we say we will raise to make up the 1.2 billion cost structure in this case? Is that your claim?
Well, I am saying that I have my doubt as to whether that can happen.
But you cannot rule out the possibility of redoing so?
I wouldn't rule that out, but I would like to see that happen.
Are your doubts grounded on firm evidence of previous engagements?
Because I think that, you see, if you look at some of the items, the cost centers, the procurement of the items, and then current prices, you probably would see that some of the expected purchases or procurement are perhaps, you know, hedged. I'm not sure what was. Okay. So was it indexed to inflation? What an assumption is made about the price in future, and it's all in there. Now that could turn out to be an overestimation because the conditions may change. I mean, if it was indexed to a certain growth in the value of the cost of the items, it could be lower. And sometimes we call those things submarine budgeting. You put in a bigger one down there and just a small one up here. You know? So it could happen. I'm saying that it could happen, but I have not interrogated it in detail, and that's one of the things I would like to do to ensure that the cost can be brought down.
The 1.2 billion, is it too big?
It's big.
It's too big.
It's big.
Should have been lower than that.
The party has put its position on that one. That I think we have to interrogate that as well.
Okay, now let me put out this one. Gabi Asare-Ochidako is an insider in this government. He put out a statement on his Facebook saying that I don't understand what the National Identification Authority is doing. Mightily frustrating. You are being bashed left, right, and center over $1.2 billion contract for the ID cards. My reliable information is that the NPP inherited an NDC contract, which lawyers advised that to get out of it would lead to a judgment debt. So the contract was renegotiated and significantly improved. What is stopping the NIA from putting out these facts? It gets so annoying. You cannot be incompetent in stating your case when you have a good case. He's getting really frustrated.
Well,
Did the NIA start this 1.2 billion contract you say is too big?
Well, again, it sounds like it was a signed contract, $1.2 billion contract signed.
He's saying that
they inherited a signed contract for $1.2 billion.
Yes.
And then they accepted it.
Yes.
Well, for a government that the party that's been campaigning against sole sourcing and all of that, and they didn't question it. I mean, how is that possible? How is that possible? If Gabi is a very central person in the NPP, they were giving a contract of $1.2 billion by NDC. Signed contract?
Okay, so let's be clear.
No, I think there's something wrong.
Let's be clear on this one. Yeah. Can you definitely state categorically that the NDC government did not leave a $1.2 billion contract to this particular government?
Why would we question it if we did? I don't think we did.
No, sorry. I don't think it's not good enough.
Okay.
Did it happen or it did not happen?
I will say it did not happen.
You will say, or you are stating categorically?
I'm stating categorically that we didn't leave a contract. Because
you're not so sure of it?
From what we heard.
But you're not in office, so how do you know that?
No, but the team came to us yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, they just signed the contract. They have just signed a contract. So if you inherited an unsigned contract, I mean, so what legal document bound you to that one?
So you're saying that there was a contract, but it was not signed?
That's the point I'm making. We were told yesterday.
So first you said there was no contract. Now you said there was a contract, but it was not signed.
No.
Exactly what is Pata
I am
saying?
saying that yesterday, the Ghana Card ID team came over to the party office to present. I mean, of course, the intention was to seek a buy-in.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and
post facto.
Post facto, and we took issue with that, but they gave us the rundown on the things that they were doing. There's a contract, there's a process that had to be signed. And in any case, this is a public institution. It has to go to Parliament. The Finance Committee of Parliament will have to review that. And every year we send our programs to the Finance Committee of Parliament.
I'm not doubting
and unless they approve that one, you can't do that. There has never been any time that, I mean, this would have been one of the biggest issues that NPP would have raised the first day they won election, and they started promising.
But they said that because of the judgment death probabilities,
but
they actually
I won't take
manage it.
Gabi's tweet as the position of the government and the party.
He's reliably informed.
Well,
you cannot doubt Gabi Asayoshi that puts inside that information within this government.
Really?
He's a kingpin. I'm sure you know that.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, that's a journalistic trick that you always do. My unimpeachable source says that this is...
This is not journalistic. This is an insider, very close to the president, a relative for that matter.
He could have written. He could have gone to court on this matter. I mean, that he had many options, better options than going on social media.
So you're saying that it
perhaps it's not even...
You're saying that it is completely false.
I don't want to...
No, it's not in doubt that it is a street. I mean,
no, I don't want to
denying that.
But I don't know whether that's Gabi's, because we create false accounts. And somebody must have done that just to run heads together. So I don't want to get sentimental about a post allegedly put by Gabi, so he comes to...
Okay, but to be clear, you are not disputing the fact that the NDC did not sign a contract like that. You are saying it did not happen.
I think I can stick my head out and state categorically that NDC did not sign a $1.2 billion contract for the delivery of national ID
Was the
system.
NDC in the throes of working on a $1.2 billion contract?
They may have been in the process, because I left 5 years ago.
Had the NDC engaged this particular institution?
Well, I mean, it was in NDC's time in 2016. So obviously, it was working under an NDC government.
Dr. William Mahaji, you were not the NIA boss when the party left office.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So how are you able to conclusively tell us this particular information is not true when you are not the boss then?
Oh, but I mean, that's the point I'm making, that yesterday when they made the statement, the boss who took over from, was sitting right there as well. I mean, so clearly he would have established that as a fact, because he would have pointed, because we were sitting opposite each other. So he would have said that was what you left for me. No.
Okay, I get you. One more thing that's also important is that they say one of the things what they are grappling with as an NIA today is because you and your successor left a huge debt for them. debt that is drowning the institution,
Really?
debt out of poor management, debt out
Really?
of poor running of finances.
And
at
they
the
said that was
NIA.
how much?
I mean, they have not put a figure to it, but they had to renegotiate some of this debt. That's why they don't have money to roll out the way they ought to roll out.
But I told you, in my time, I actually started the process of earning income for the government.
But you also told us that you were never given the estimated
But
budget that you asked for.
That wasn't the debt. That wasn't the debt.
But
that was
you're
just
saying that
shortfalls in.
I get you.
Yeah.
But that means that you did not do the intended operations the money was meant for. So you could have actually had a debt. That's what you're saying.
No.
Right. No. One other point.
You're saying money meant for. If I
so you
received
did
the
a budget,
money,
right?
I didn't get the money.
So you didn't get the money at all.
Yeah. So
the project
I
was
wouldn't
not
have
done.
used.
There was no pre-financing from any institution.
No.
There was no carried out projects that required payments.
Oh well, I mean, for at least at the time that I had secured financing for the enrollment that we did, and it was paid for. And I'm saying that we also started a project that was bringing in income. You know, so we didn't undertake operations that left the institution with debt, because in any case, why would you go and undertake an operation if you don't have approval for it, if you don't have budgetary allocation for it?
That's your time.
You don't even have the authorization to do that.
That's your time. Right?
I haven't seen any audit report on NIA that has shown the quantum of debt left for anybody.
Can you speak authoritatively for your successor too?
I would rather you brought him here and he would speak to that.
Okay, so you cannot say that he also did not leave any debt, really?
He probably, I don't know. That I wouldn't be able to.
So you cannot dismiss the claim that the debt was actually left after the NDC left office? Because
I doubt
you can only speak for your tenure.
I doubt that. I am saying I doubt that, because there was no
And your
operation,
basis
there was no registration
Yeah.
beyond my time.
Okay,
I
I
had
get you.
completed a registration exercise. So what was happening was just trying to find ways of raising money. Not necessarily, you can't spend what you don't have. So the cost, the releases to the organization were just for the normal, overhead costs as an institution. It didn't involve it. It did some card personalization, but that was already because the system was there. There was personalization material.
Okay.
There was the glues. There were the blank cards. There were the strips and all of that. So those ones you would do that, but they are not. You don't go out there to procure those things. They were in the store. But if there was any debt, it may be, the usual thing that the public institutions have about payment of people's,
Do you still maintain that 1.2 billion is a huge amount?
I do.
Regardless of the fact that this is a bigger scope?
I do. Because
are you aware of the extent of the scope in this case?
What's bigger?
Have you been briefed about the scope?
If you do the per capita computations,
yeah,
it means that the money you spend for one person, and there are international benchmarks.
Yeah.
If you did a computation, we're spending too much per head on this ID thing.
And by your too much, what do you mean?
Oh, I mean, some figures have been thrown out. There about $30 per person.
About $30 per person. But that's not what they're actually saying for card production operations. That's what they're saying.
I don't know what.
That's what their document does not say that.
What did they
actually
say?
They stipulate that for the combined cost of card production operations cost is actually 73% of the cost. So a total of 88.9 million cards will be issued over a 15-year period, made up of 52.2 million smart cards at $5.40 per card.
Then let me explain what I'm saying.
$5.40 per card. So the 30 is not true.
Let me you see there
So
all the costs associated with issuing the card are used in computing that.
No, but
it's not that just because you are really.
Which other cost are you talking about? Is it operational cost? Because that's also taken care of in this particular computation anyway.
I doubt that.
Really? They say that the operational cost for the 15 years includes the recruitment and training of personnel. And in fact, the schedule and the
recruitment and training of personnel.
Yes, and it also moves beyond that. The mass registration and card issuance exercise, the registration of all citizens both at home and abroad, development and implementation of comprehensive communication and public education campaigns, establishment of regional district zonal offices across the country, and admissions abroad to provide daily registration exercise. It sounds quite comprehensive to me.
Did they include the equipment?
Yes, they make that point clearly here too. And specifically, they put it under capital expenditure and say it's an estimated 108 million that will be put for that. And this covers the central site, registration equipment, verification systems, disaster recovery systems, and card printers.
As I said, we would interrogate that. We would interrogate that. And that's what the party says. And so there's going to be a team that will do a thorough analysis of that. If for any reason
it sounds to me that you were not privy to the party's statement and went into it, because if you had advised them specifically on this amount,
you have this information.
Yes, you don't have it.
At the time that they came to us, we didn't have that
You're
information.
of the considered opinion that even with very little information, you still went out to do a press conference and condemn a statement like this. That is not.
We didn't do a press conference.
As in issue a statement and condemn what they call it, something that you did not have enough information on.
But you see, what was the point in coming to talk to us then? That we gave blanket support to something that we don't have information on. It is the onus rested on them to convince us with that. We spent almost 3 hours.
After you've been given the information, has your mind changed about
the
cost structure?
You giving me the information?
No, I'm talking about when they met you. When they met you was to brief you, was to get your buy-in.
But I'm telling you,
that means that they'll give you information.
I sat in there and I'm saying that
you didn't get information
at a meeting.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have this kind of detail.
Okay.
You can't have this kind of detail.
Did you demand for details?
We've asked that we be given, and indeed, the executive secretary has agreed that he was going to send me some information.
Okay.
So when it comes, we'll look at it. In any case, let me just state
I get your point.
Yeah, let me just state that NDC as a party is not opposed
to the.
Indeed, we
I agree with you
support
because
it.
you stated it at first.
Yeah.
My next question, forgive me, is to find out from you. Now it looks like an indefinite suspension. Do you think this technical problem will be surmounted anytime soon?
It's very worrying because if it was just a technical hitch, you know, as we understood it,
or we are made to believe,
we were made to believe, it's fixable. And indeed, we normally would have, first of all, when you install new equipment, you do all the operational acceptance test, which is a requirement. Now, I heard the executive secretary say that they've done the simulations and everything worked, but on the day of rollout, it didn't work, or it failed.
Yes, as of Saturday, it didn't work.
Yes. Now, what that means is that there could be a problem. The equipment failure can happen, like we had with even the verification devices that we use for elections. On the day of verifications, it could die. It could fail on account of maybe information overload. It could fail on account of even the weather. Sometimes when you're watching your,
I get you.
Yeah. So when you're running it across, you know, distance and time, it could be a result of the bandwidth that was being used, the traffic on that, because the NIA has nobody's own system.
From the period of time that they've had to fix this problem, and today is Wednesday, they still have not fixed the problem. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and they will tell us when they're able to fix it. Do you think that it is just a technical glitch or a bigger problem than that?
I want to believe that it's a technical glitch, and because, I mean, it is a serious issue
within a few days.
I hope so. It's a very serious case, a serious matter to announce that you're going to start in the presidency with the security agencies and with other important state institutions.
How long should it take?
I don't think the intention was to deceive the public. No.
How long do you think it should take for them to fix the problem?
It depends on the nature of the problem. If it hasn't been fixed in 2 or 3 days, then it means that it's because if you had run the test
then it
already,
means that it's what, a big problem?
It's a bigger problem, because if you had run the test already and you got the check off, and then at the point of rolling out, something happened, it must be a serious problem, because that means that it took you off guard. You didn't anticipate that. Is it the volume of data that was going to go through that process at the same time? I mean,
do you think we will be back with registration anytime soon?
I think so. I'm looking forward to it.
No, I'm asking for a technical opinion on the matter.
Well, I'm not. I want to.
I want to
operate on the assurance that we had from the executive secretary yesterday.
But he has not given any date anyway.
No, it's an indefinite thing, and that's a bit worrying though.
Okay.
But it's a way of allowing yourself to be sure that it's working. So you give yourself space and time, and then you fix that one, and then you get
Doc,
back
we should have this conversation again. Forgive me, I've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us here today. My guest today on the talk about whether or not we are getting the national ID cards anytime soon is Dr. William Ahaji. He's a former NIA boss, a very competent one at that. But folks, that's where we tie the nice reviews on today's edition of Upfront. My name is Raymond Dalkwa.